Time to dive back into this JMP Marshall 50 watt. Had a buzz in it, undoing all the factory bus ground wire stuff on the backs of the pots. Gonna redo the ground much better. For those of you who are already up in arms, oh my God, he's making a change to this old JMP. This is not some notion I have. This is not me reading something on a forum somewhere and then just start hacking away at an old Marshall. This is actually applied science. I've done this many times. It empirically gives a better result. If the stock sounded good, I would not be doing this. The stock often has major issues caused by ground eddy currents, and the explanation for that is longer than I have time to get into today. So I'm not going to show everything that I do. This is not going to be a long, drawn-out video, but I'm going to show some of the highlights and important points. So let me get started, and I'll jump in and show little bits as they become important. And at the end, I'll grab an excerpt from the previous video where you can hear that buzz and existing noise floor, and we'll compare it to where it's at when this is done. Here's something well worth pointing out. This is the old Presence pot, and all of the pots in this, with the exception of this CTS that I've replaced before, have these black oxide washers. So you have brass, you've got whatever pot metals here, you've got this black oxide stuff, and then you got the chassis itself. And you got dissimilar metals. The black oxide washers just do not do as good a ground as the zinc ones like that, the silver colored ones. And then over time, the chassis connection gets dirty as well. And so when you're using the pot casing to chassis connection for your signal grounds, you get a lot of problems. It is much better in every way to use the pot casing connection to chassis, only to shield the components inside the potentiometer itself, to shield the wipers and the track, and not to use it for any real grounding purpose. So I have removed this so I can have access to put a new solder lug here without hitting the pot when I drill. And I will clean that chassis and put all this stuff back, but I'm not concerned with this being a perfect ground through this black oxide washer. I only need it to be good enough for shielding, and shielding can be, several ohms and still be effective. And I could have 30 ohms there, and that'd be a fine shielding. It's not a good ground. And I need to do a video at some point on the difference between shielding, signal ground, as in a signal negative in reference to the AC signal, a DC negative. We just throw the term ground around interchangeably, but there are signal grounds, there are DC grounds, there are shielding grounds, and in most amplifiers, the chassis serves all these roles, but you have to know what role it's being asked to play, and there are better ways to address this. So ground is not ground. Here's another bit that needs to be mentioned. I removed the ground lug from here, and I just reattach this hardware, because all I need this hardware to do now is just hold the clamp for this cap in place. But this one I'm going to use for the reservoir cap ground and for the HT center tap ground, which is this black wire here. And that's going to be going to chassis here. And this heater center tap, if I use it, will be going to chassis at a new ground lug added here that will also get the bias. But what I wanted to show here is even if I were to redo this stock, you get corrosion at these chassis ground points over the years due to dissimilar metals contacting each other, not making perfect contact, oxygen getting in there, and stuff just gets kind of yucky. So I'm going to clean all that, but I'm not going to reuse this stuff because it has this flat washer, has a very small connection for any wires. It's really hard to get a secure connection there. And the black oxide stuff just sucks. I will be reusing the brass nut and screw because they're fine. Let me show you what I'm going to do instead. Well, I cleaned that area of the chassis very thoroughly. You can see where I haven't cleaned. On some chassis, I need to burnish that to get some real good metal-to-metal contact. In this case, it's okay. I just need to be thoroughly cleaned. So I've got a new ground lug there, which had two larger holes compared to the single small hole in the original. And those always end up with just tack soldered wires there. Nothing really good. So again, the reservoir ground is going to have a wire to here, which is where this HT center tap is. And the screen and phase inverter will have a ground wire going off to the next part of the circuit. And that will have many, many benefits, including the fact that they're going to have much better metal-to-metal contact here. This has got teeth on the washer part of the ground lug. And once I get that second solder joint there and it's cooled off, I will apply some clear nail polish over this so that oxygen cannot get in and will not have any reaction from one metal to the next, because that happens in the presence of oxygen. Okay, I'm done-ish. I'm much closer to being done. So, new ground lug here, which has the high gain input jack ground and has the cathode for this stage and has the CAN negative for the dual filter cap supply beneath the board, which is all going to this lug here. This lug has this cathode and this cathode, has the low gain input jack and the volume pot, the preamp gain. This ground lug has the presence control with its new cap and resistor. The mids ground, mids negative, goes to the ground lug on the master volume, which then goes back to here. And the screen and phase inverter multi-section CAN caps are also grounded here. The reservoir cap here, just to the left of where you can see, its ground is going to this ground point here. Right beneath the board here, there's a new lug which has the bias ground on it. And I have the filament center tap floating. I'll tape that off and tuck that away. And I've got two artificial center taps here. Two 100 ohm resistors making an artificial center tap to ground at the output. And with the master on 10, there's a very slight background in the back. And if I turn it down from 5 o'clock to like 4 o'clock, it's almost totally silent. If I put this in place to emulate the shielding that it'll have when it's actually in the cabinet, some of the extraneous noises go away at that point. And this is what that would sound like using this for the clean sound at this point. Try to do this without blasting my wife, who's upstairs on the phone. That's really nice. That's a very low level. So I'm going to turn the master volume down to like 1 o'clock now. Turn the preamp all the way up on the clean. That's all very nice. So now we turn the preamp gain all the way down, going to the high gain input. And I think I may need to add a little snubber cap on the input stage triode. Let's turn this up to like 1 o'clock, 1 or 2 o'clock. I don't have the knobs on, so I'm going by kind of guesstimate. And the master at like 10 o'clock-ish. That's a place a lot of people would use this. So that's really good. I mean, you have white noise, but not the 120 hertz, not the 60 hertz, and all the multiples of that. So I'm very pleased with all this. Let me see if I'm right about needing to maybe add a snubber cap about oscillation. Let's do this without playing because, like I said, my wife's upstairs on the phone, but I'm turning the preamp gain all the way up and the master up quite a bit. I'm listening for ringing. That was with the presence dimed and the treble dimed, and the master and preamp both dimed. With the master down, I'm not getting any oscillation, at least with this in place. So that's good. And let me pick up the thing that just fell on the floor. Now the previous F&Ts were installed in August of 2013. And usually 7-8-year-old caps would still be good for filter caps. This is the first time I've ever encountered an F&T that was bulging. You can just see it kind of domed there. It's very unusual. This is, again, the one that was right next to this EL84. They're rated for 85 degrees Celsius. It might have just been from exposure to the heat from that tube. So it's got all new electrolytic F&Ts. I do trust the caps. That's the only failure I've ever had with one. And I'm thinking the amp is sounding really good. It needs some further testing. I'm going to let it run for a while, see if any issues develop. And I've got the master volume. Let's see. I'd say that's about 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock. That's really loud if I were to play right now. Turn the preamp down to like noon. This is a really loud sound, and there's no hum or buzz. It's just the white noise, and that's almost inescapable. So I'm pleased with that. Next, I need to find where the little washer, the little tooth washer for that lug right here on the board went. I was talking to a friend earlier, and I had my phone sitting on the little black oxide washers right next to the nuts. And I picked up my phone, and one of the washers went flying across the room. I don't know whether it was dumb luck, whether the phone's slightly magnetic and I didn't know it, whatever, but I got to go spend probably an hour on my hands and knees finding that missing washer. That's the kind of day I'm having.